You know, it's interesting what people see from the outside. They see the cover drives, the records, the celebrations. They see the man who scored 400 runs in a single test innings, and they think they understand something about focus. They think it's a gift, something you're born with, a switch you can flip on when you walk onto the field. I need to tell you something, and it's going to sound contrary to everything you've ever believed about high performance. It might even make you uncomfortable because it will force you to question your own habits, your own routines, your own definition of discipline. But if you're willing to listen, if you're willing to challenge what you think you know, I'll show you that the secret to that focus wasn't found in the stadium under the lights of a packed crowd. It was forged in the silence, in the darkness, at an hour when the rest of the world was still asleep. It was built at 3 a.m. This isn't a story about cricket, not really. This is a story about the architecture of the mind. This is about building a fortress of concentration so impregnable that not even the pressure of a world record, not the weight of an entire nation's expectations, not the fear of failure can breach its walls. And I'm going to share it with you because I see a world now that is drowning in distraction. A world that celebrates busyness over depth, notifications over concentration, and constant connection over profound, solitary focus. You are losing something precious. You are losing your ability to immerse yourself so completely in a single task that the rest of the universe simply fades away. And without that, you will never, ever reach the peak of your potential in any field. Not in sports, not in business, not in art, not in life. People ask me, Brian, how did you do it? How did you maintain that level of concentration for an entire day and then another facing over 500 balls? They expect me to talk about batting techniques, about footwork, about hand-eye coordination. Those things are important. They are the tools of the trade, but they are not the craftsman. The craftsman is the mind, and the mind must be sharpened, honed, and prepared in solitude. My 3 a.m. routine was not about punishment. It wasn't about masochistic early rising. It was about seizing a window of time that belonged to no one else. A time without phone calls, without emails, without the demands of family or friends, without the sound of traffic, without the pull of the outside world. It was a sacred space. A contract I made with myself every single day to build the mental muscle that would later carry me through when my body was screaming in fatigue. Let me take you there. Let me describe a typical morning, not during a test match, but during training. In the off season, when the real work was done, the alarm would go off at 2:55 a.m. No snooze button, never a snooze button. The first test, the first act of focus is in that very first moment of consciousness. The choice to not succumb to the comfort of the warm bed, to the seductive whisper of more sleep. Your mind will give you 1,000 excuses. It's too early. You're tired. You can start tomorrow. 1 more hour won't hurt. This is the first battle, and you must win it instantly. If you win this battle, you set a precedent for the entire day. You tell your subconscious mind that you are in command. So my feet would hit the floor, no hesitation. The house was silent, a deep, profound silence that is almost a physical presence. This is where most people would feel loneliness or a sense of oddness. You must learn to not just tolerate this silence, but to crave it, to see it as the blank canvas upon which you will paint your day. I would move through the dark house, not turning on bright lights, allowing my eyes to adjust. The first stop was the kitchen, not for a stimulant, not for a coffee, but for a large glass of cool water. Hydration is the first step to awakening the system, not jolting it. Then I would move to my study, a simple room, a chair, a desk, a single lamp that casts a small pool of light, leaving the rest of the room in shadow. This is crucial. The environment must be engineered for focus. The single lamp creates a literal spotlight, forcing your world to shrink to the task at hand. There were no pictures on the walls, no clutter on the desk, no phone, nothing that could pull a single thread of my attention away. For the first 30 minutes, from 3 to 3:30 a.m., I did not train my body. I trained my mind. I would sit in that chair, back straight, feet flat on the floor, and I would simply breathe. But it wasn't simply breathing. It was deliberate, conscious breathing. In through the nose for a count of 4, hold for a count of 7, out through the mouth for a count of 8. This is a physiological sigh. It does something powerful to your nervous system. It tells your body, your primal brain, that there is no danger, that you are safe, that you are in control. In that state of calm, alertness, I would begin the visualization. This was not daydreaming. This was a hyper-realistic, full sensory mental simulation. I would close my eyes and I would be at the crease. I wouldn't just see the bowler. I would feel the texture of the bat handle in my hands. I would smell the freshly cut grass of the pitch. I would hear the specific sound of the crowd at the Kensington Oval, a low, distant roar. I would face every single type of delivery, not just in a generic sense. I would visualize a specific bowler, Courtney Walsh, Glenn McGrath, Shane Warne. I would see the run-up, the gather, the release. I would watch the seam of the ball rotating in the air. I would track its trajectory. I would see it pitch on a specific spot just short of a length on-off stump. I would feel my body moving in response, a slight shift back and across the front elbow, leading the bat coming down straight. I would feel the perfect, solid connection as the ball met the middle of the bat. And I would watch it race away to the boundary. I would do this for hundreds of deliveries. I would also visualize getting beaten, edging one, getting hit on the pad, and I would visualize my response. Not frustration, not anger, a reset, a tapping of the bat, a fresh guard, a clearing of the mind, ready for the next ball. This is the key. You must program your mind for success, but you must also inoculate it against failure. You must make failure a familiar, non-threatening event within the safe confines of your mind, so that when it happens in reality, it doesn't trigger panic. It triggers a pre-programmed response of calm recalibration. By 3:30 a.m., before I had even broken a sweat, I had already faced more mental deliveries than most batsmen would in a full day at the nets. My neural pathways for focus, for reaction, for emotional control were already primed and firing with precision. The world outside was still dark, still asleep. But in my mind, I was already in the middle, under the brightest lights, performing at my peak. This is the first and most important secret. The battle is won in the mind long before it is ever played out on the field. After the mental session, the transition to physical movement was deliberate and mindful. It was never a rush. The body must wake up as the mind has woken up with purpose, not with panic. I would rise from the chair, feeling a sense of clarity that is impossible to describe to someone who has never cultivated it. It's a quiet hum of readiness, a deep-seated calm that is simultaneously energizing. The walk from my study to my simple home gym was a continuation of the practice. I would pay attention to the feeling of the cool floor beneath my feet, the slight shift of muscles in my legs, the rhythm of my breath. This is not mystical nonsense. This is anchoring your consciousness in the present moment, ensuring that no part of you is still asleep, no part of you is on autopilot. The physical training from 3:30 a.m. to around 5 a.m. was never about building bulk or raw power. Cricket at its highest level is a game of explosive grace, of sustained concentration translated into precise, fluid movement. My routine was built around this principle. It was about creating a body that was a perfect, responsive instrument for the mind that had just been sharpened. We called it awakening the kinetic chain. Every exercise, every stretch was designed to fire the neural pathways between brain and muscle, to reinforce the mind-body connection forged during visualization. It began with dynamic flexibility, not static stretching, which can be counterproductive on cold muscles, but movement, leg swings, forward and side to side, waking up the hips, the engine of a batsman's power, arm circles, small, then large, loosening the shoulders, spinal twists, gentle and controlled, ensuring the core was ready to rotate with the speed and force needed to hook a 90 mile-per-hour delivery. This was a conversation with my body. Are you ready? Is this joint mobile? Is that muscle awake? I was taking inventory, not just going through motions. Then came the core work, but not endless crunches. We focused on the anti-movements, planks, side planks, Pallof presses, exercises that teach the core to resist force, to remain stable and rigid when an outside impulse like the impact of a fastball on a bat tries to disrupt it. A stable core is the foundation from which all fluent batting shots emanate. If the core collapses, the shot loses its power and its purity. I would hold a plank for 3 minutes, and my mind wouldn't be counting the seconds. It would be focused on the feeling of my entire body forming a straight, solid line from head to heels, on the rhythm of my breath flowing through this solid structure. This is focus in action. It's the ability to pour 100% of your awareness into a single, seemingly simple physical task. The resistance training was functional. It mirrored the movements of batting, medicine ball slams, rotational throws against a wall. These weren't about lifting the most weight. They were about moving with the most speed and control under tension. I would simulate the drive, the pull, the cut with a weighted ball, feeling the exact sequence of muscle engagement from the ground up, through the legs, the rotating core, the uncoiling shoulders, and the snapping arms. This is where the visualization met reality. The mind had already seen the perfect shot. Now the body was learning the perfect kinetic feeling of it. The neural pathways laid down in the quiet of the study were now being paved with muscle memory. And then the footwork drills. In a small, marked out grid, I would practice my movements. Forward press, back foot defense, quick steps to get to the pitch of the ball. This was done with a silence and a seriousness that outsiders might find strange. No ball was being bowled. It was just me, the shadows, and the sound of my feet on the floor. Push, step, balance, shift, pivot, settle. This is the dance of batting, and it must be so deeply ingrained that it requires no conscious thought during the chaos of a match. By repeating these patterns in the absolute quiet of the early morning, I was carving them into my subconscious. I was making them automatic, freeing my conscious mind to focus on the bowler's hand, the seam position, the trajectory. By 5 a.m., as the very first hint of light might begin to touch the horizon, I was drenched in sweat, but my mind was still quiet, still focused. There was no exhaustion, there was a profound vitality. The feeling was one of completeness. The mind had directed and the body had obeyed. They were now in sync, a single, unified instrument. I would finish with a final period of controlled breathing, standing still in the middle of the room, feeling my heart rate slow, feeling the sweat cool on my skin, feeling the deep, satisfying fatigue of muscles that had been used with purpose. This was the culmination, not the tiredness that comes from frantic, distracted effort, but the fatigue that comes from total, undiluted application. It's a feeling of wealth. You feel rich in focus, rich in discipline, rich in self-knowledge. The rest of the world was about to wake up and begin its frantic scramble, its battle against distractions. But I had already won my most important battle. I had built my fortress for the day, and nothing could break it. Now, you might be thinking, this is extreme. This is for a world-class athlete. What does this have to do with my life, with my work, with my goals? And this is where I need to tell you the second secret, the one that goes beyond the physical routine. The 3 a.m. wake-up call, the breathing, the visualization, the training, these were merely the containers. They were the crucible in which the real transformation happened. The real product wasn't a better batsman. It was a more focused mind. And that is something every single one of you needs desperately, whether you're a student, an entrepreneur, an artist, or a parent. Let me explain what happens to your mind in that sacred space of the early morning and why it's fundamentally different from any other time of day. Modern neuroscience has a term for it, the urgency of the unimportant. From the moment your normal day begins, your brain is under assault. The ping of a text message, the red notification bubble on an app, the demanding subject line of an email, the traffic jam on your commute, the colleague who needs just 5 minutes. Your brain, in its evolutionary design, is wired to respond to novelty, to immediate stimuli. Each of these interruptions creates a tiny shot of cortisol, the stress hormone. It forces a context switch in your brain. You were thinking about your important project, and now you're thinking about a forgotten birthday. This constant low-grade stress and context switching is the absolute enemy of deep focus. It fractures your attention into 1,000 little pieces. By noon, you feel busy, you feel productive, but you have not done the one thing that truly moves the needle. You have not engaged in deep work. My 3 a.m. routine was, at its core, a strategic withdrawal from that assault. It was a declaration that for these 2 sacred hours, the urgent did not exist, only the important remained. During that time, my prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for complex decision making, for foresight, for concentration, was able to operate without competition. It was like giving a master sculptor a silent, well-lit studio instead of asking him to work in the middle of a noisy, chaotic market. The quality of the work is fundamentally, unrecognizably different. This is what you have lost. You have lost your silent studio. You have given your most valuable cognitive real estate, your focused attention to the highest bidder, which is usually the most trivial distraction. You check your phone 150 times a day and wonder why you can't write that novel or build that business plan or even have a truly present conversation with your child. Your brain has been trained for fragmentation. My routine was a daily retraining for wholeness. Let me give you a concrete example from outside of cricket. During the latter part of my career, I was involved in launching a business venture. The board meetings, the investor calls, the endless strategy documents, it was a world built on distraction. But I applied the same principle. I would wake up at the same time, and for the first hour, I wouldn't visualize bowlers. I would visualize the business meeting. I would sit in that same chair and run through the entire presentation in my mind. I would anticipate every possible question, every objection from a skeptical investor. I would feel the room, see the faces, and hear my own voice responding with clarity and conviction. By the time I walked into the actual boardroom, it felt familiar. It felt like a repetition of a scenario I had already mastered. The anxiety was gone, replaced by a calm command. The other people in the room, still shaking off their sleep, still buzzing from their frantic morning commutes and inbox checks, were already at a disadvantage. Their minds were scattered. Mine was a laser. I had already done the deep work while they were still asleep. This is the transferable skill. This is the superpower that the 3 a.m. routine cultivates. It's not about cricket. It's about creating a daily sanctuary for your cognitive potential. It's about building a mind that can hold a single complex thought for an extended period without fracturing. In a world that monetizes your distraction, the ability to focus deeply is becoming the rarest and most valuable currency. It is what separates the truly great from the merely good in any field. You don't need to practice cover drives to need this. You need it to write your book. You need it to solve your engineering problem. You needed to learn a new language. You needed to be the parent who truly listens instead of the parent who is just physically present while their mind is on a phone screen. The routine is the practice ground for your attention muscle. And just like any muscle, it is weak in most people from chronic disuse. It atrophies under the constant barrage of notifications and interruptions. My 3 a.m. sessions were the ultimate weightlifting for that muscle. Holding a visualization for 30 minutes without my mind wandering was a rep. Maintaining perfect form in a footwork drill while focusing only on the feeling of balance was a rep. Resisting the urge to check the time, to wonder what was happening in the world, to let a stray thought about yesterday's problem derail me, that was a rep. Every morning I was doing hundreds of reps, strengthening my focus muscle until it became so powerful that when I walked out into the distracted world, I was immune. The noise couldn't touch me. I carried the silence within me. There's a question I know is forming in your mind. It's the same doubt that would creep into my own thoughts during particularly cold, dark mornings when my body felt heavy with sleep. Is this worth it? What am I really gaining from this extreme discipline that I couldn't get from an extra 2 hours of sleep and a normal morning routine? This is the critical moment where most people turn back. They rationalize, they convince themselves that moderation is the answer, that burning the candle at both ends is foolish, but they're missing the fundamental point entirely. What you gain isn't just more time. What you gain is a different quality of consciousness. Let me tell you about the psychology of the empty room. When you remove all external stimuli, when you sit in a quiet, dark room with nothing but your own mind, You come face to face with yourself in a way that is normally avoided at all costs in our modern world. In that emptiness, your anxieties surface, your doubts speak up, your fears become loud. The first few weeks of my 3 a.m. routine were not peaceful. They were a battle. My mind was a wild animal, kicking and screaming against the confinement of the silence. It wanted distraction. It wanted to go back to sleep. It wanted to think about anything other than the intense focus I was demanding of it. This is the second deeper purpose of the routine. It's not just about building focus, it's about confronting the internal resistance that prevents focus. It's about meeting the part of you that is lazy, scared, and addicted to comfort, and looking it directly in the eye until it backs down. Every morning I sat in that chair and breathed through the urge to quit. I was winning a victory over my weaker self. I was building what the ancient Stoics called inner citadel, a fortress of self-mastery that no external event could breach. This is why the record-breaking 400 times was possible. The physical endurance was one thing, but the mental endurance, the ability to stay present, ball after ball, hour after hour, while the pressure mounted and history whispered in my ear that was forged in those 3 a.m. battles. When the temptation arose to get reckless, to play a flashy shot out of boredom or frustration, the discipline of the morning routine kicked in. It was the ingrained habit of returning to the breath, of resetting, of focusing on the process, just the next ball that kept me anchored. The crowd faded. The scoreboard became irrelevant. There was only the bowler, the ball, and me. That hyperclarity, that tunnel vision, is a direct product of learning to sit with the discomfort of the empty room. I want you to imagine your own mind as a lake. During a normal day, the lake is constantly churned up. Speedboats of urgent emails, jet skis of social media notifications, and the steady rain of daily worries keep the water muddy and turbulent. You can't see the bottom. You can't see what's really in there. My 3 a.m. routine was the process of letting the lake become still. Hour by hour, in the silence, the sediment would settle. The turbulence would cease. And by the time the sun rose, the water was crystal clear. I could see all the way to the bottom. I could see my true intentions, my deepest values, my clearest priorities, unobscured by the daily chaos. This clarity is the most valuable asset you can possess. Most people are making decisions from a muddy lake, reacting to the latest ripple on the surface. I was making decisions from a place of profound stillness and clarity, able to see the deep currents. Let me be blunt. The world does not want you to have this clarity. The economy is built on your impulsiveness. Social media platforms are designed to hijack your attention. The 24-hour news cycle feeds on your anxiety. You are being manipulated every day to keep your lake churned up because a distracted population is a compliant and consumptive one. When you cultivate this kind of deep focus and self-awareness, you opt out of that manipulation. You become ungovernable by the forces of triviality. You start to make choices based on your own deep values, not on the latest trend or fear-mongering headline. This is the real secret they don't tell you about high performance. It's a rebellious act. It's a quiet, personal revolution against the age of distraction. When I was at the crease for those long innings, I wasn't just playing against the opposing team. I was playing against the entire culture of fragmented attention. I was proving that a human being could still sustain a single powerful thought for an entire day. And that, more than any record, is the victory I am most proud of. The record is just a number. The discipline, the focus, the self-mastery, that's the real legacy. And it's a legacy available to anyone brave enough to turn off the noise and face the silence. Now, I need to tell you the hardest truth, the one that might make you want to dismiss everything I've shared. This isn't for everyone. This path demands a price that most people aren't willing to pay. It requires you to sacrifice the comfort of collective distraction, the camaraderie of shared complaints about being so busy, the easy escape of numbing your mind with endless content. When you start on this journey, you will initially feel isolated. You'll be waking while others sleep, thinking while others scroll, building while others consume. There will be moments of profound loneliness in that 3 a.m. silence, moments where the temptation to rejoin the sleeping world will feel overwhelming. I remember one specific morning during a particularly difficult period in my career. I was struggling with my form. The newspapers were writing me off. The critics were sharpening their knives. That morning, the alarm felt like an enemy. Every cell in my body screamed to turn it off, to hide under the covers, to delay the confrontation with my own failing performance for just a few more hours of ignorant sleep. The walk to my study felt like a march to the gallows, and when I sat in a chair and closed my eyes to visualize, I couldn't see the perfect cover drive. All I could see were my own failures, the edges, the missed shots, the disappointed faces in the crowd. This was the crucible. This was the moment that defines you. I could have given up. I could have told myself, see, it's not working. This routine is pointless. But the routine itself provided the structure to endure. The habit was stronger than the temporary feeling. I didn't have to decide to persevere. The decision had already been made hundreds of times before by simply showing up. So I just breathed in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8. I did it again and again. I didn't try to force the positive visualization. I just focused on the breath, on the anchor of the process itself. And slowly, like a storm clearing, the mental chatter subsided. The negative images lost their power. And eventually, I was able to once again see the ball clearly. That day, I went out and scored a century. But the real victory had already been won hours earlier in the dark, alone with my doubts. This is what you're signing up for. You're not signing up for a life hack. You're signing up for a daily confrontation with your own limitations. You are building a relationship with yourself that is based on discipline, not on coddling your every whim. Most people's relationship with themselves is one of constant negotiation and broken promises. I'll start tomorrow. I deserve a break. This is too hard. The 3 a.m. routine shatters that pattern. It is a non-negotiable contract with the most important person in your life, your future self. Every time you honor it, you build self-trust. You prove to yourself that you are the kind of person who does what they say they will do, regardless of how they feel in the moment. This self-trust becomes the foundation of unshakable confidence. Not the arrogant, loud confidence of someone who needs validation, but the quiet, deep confidence of someone who knows they can rely on themselves when it matters most. And this brings me to the final, most practical part. How do you start? You don't jump to 3 a.m. That would be like trying to lift my maximum weight on your first day in the gym. You would fail, get discouraged, and quit. The muscle of focus must be built gradually. Start with 6 a.m., just for a week. Set your alarm for 6 a.m. and spend just 15 minutes in a chair, in silence, doing nothing but focusing on your breath. Your mind will wander. That's fine. Gently bring it back. No phone, no book, no music, just you and the silence. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is the attempt itself. The next week, move to 5:45 a.m. and add 5 minutes. The following week, 5:30 a.m. Gradually step back the time and build the duration until you find the window that works for you, the window where the world is asleep and you are awake, building your inner fortress. The specific time is less important than the principle, claiming a slice of uninterrupted time for the sole purpose of training your mind. Maybe your 3 a.m. is 5 a.m. That's fine. The power is in the consistency and the intentionality. It's in the daily act of choosing focus over comfort, potential over procrastination, and self-mastery over external control. You won't just become more productive, you will become a different person, a person who is led by purpose, not pulled by distraction, a person who owns their attention and therefore owns their life. The choice is yours. The alarm clock is set. Will you answer the call?